Nah. That's better. Hello. Welcome back to our book series where I'm reading Alex Rider, Russian Roulette. This is by Anthony Horowitz, my favourite author, definitely. Alex Rider, action, adrenaline, adventure. The Irish Independent says it's one of the best teen spy thrillers I've ever read. That's coming from Irish Independent, though. I'm not Irish, and I'm not independent. Let's just say that. Read the blurb quickly. Contact killer Yasin Grigorovich has been given his orders. Kill Alex Rider. As Yasin considers his mission, he remembers a secret past that connects him to a 14-year-old spy. What is it that makes one of them choose to do evil? What does it take to make a killer? This is the 10th book in the Alex Rider series, and it is my favourite book. This won't make sense if you haven't watched our other episode, Alex Rider, Anthony Horowitz 1. I'm going to carry on from where I stopped in the prologue. So, I'll read the last sentence of that. It was certainly unusual, but the truth was, he had been, Alex Rider had made his own choices. He should have been at school, but instead, for whatever reason, he had allowed the Special Operations Division of MI6 to recruit him from schoolboy to spy. It was certainly unusual, but the truth was, he had been remarkably successful. Beginner's luck, maybe, but he had brought an end to an operation that had been several years in the planning. He was responsible for the deaths of 2 operatives. He had annoyed some extremely powerful people. He had much deserved the death that was coming his way. And yet, Yasin sat there where he was with the computer in front of him. Nothing had changed in his expression, but there was perhaps something flickering deep in his eyes. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, the sky turning a hard, unforgiving grey. The streets were full of commuters hurrying home. They weren't just on the other side of the hotel room. They were in another world. Yasin knew that he would never be one of them. Briefly, he closed his eyes. He was thinking about what happened, about Stormbreaker. How had it gone so wrong? From Yasin's point of view, it had been a fairly routine assignment. A Lebanese businessman by the name of Herod Sale had wanted to buy 200 litres of a deadly smallpox virus called R5, and he had approached the organisation that might be able to supply it in huge quantities. That organisation was Scorpio. The letters of the name stood for sabotage, corruption, intelligence, and assassination. Which were its main activities. R5 was a Chinese product, manufactured illegally in a facility near Guiyang. It's weird how I can't pronounce facility and I can pronounce Guiyang. And by chance, one of the members of the executive board of Scorpio was Chinese. Dr. Free had extensive contacts in East Asia and had used his influence to organise the purchase. It had been Yasin's job to oversee the delivery to the UK. 6 weeks ago, he had flown to Hong Kong, a few days ahead of the R5, which had been transported in a private plane, a turboprop Zion MA60 from Guiyang. The plan was to load it into a container ship to Rotterdam, disguised as a part of a shipment of Luck of the Dragon Chinese beer. Special barrels had been constructed in a warehouse in Kowloon, with reinforced glass containers holding the R5 suspended inside the liquid. There were more than 5,000 container ships at sea at any one time, and around 17 million deliveries are made every year. There isn't a customs service in the world that can keep its eye on every cargo, and Yasin was confident that the journey would be trouble-free. He had been given a false passport and papers that identified him as Erik Olsen, a merchant seaman from Copenhagen, and he would travel with the R5 until it reached its destination. But, as is so often the way, things had not gone as planned. A few days before the barrels were due to leave, Yasin had become aware that that the warehouse was under surveillance. He had been lucky. A cigarette being lit behind a window in a building that should have been empty told him all he needed to know. Slipping through Kowloon under the cover of darkness, he had identified a team of 3 agents of the AIVD. Sounds like I'm speaking Klingon. The Allgemeine Inlichtingen en Veiligheidstaken Verdienst. Oh my lord. The Dutch Secret Service. There must have been a tip-off. The agents didn't know what they were looking for, but they were aware that there was something on its way to their country, and Yassin had been forced to kill all 3 of them with a silenced Beretta 92, a pistol that he particularly favoured because of its accuracy and reliability. Clearly, the R5 could not leave in a container ship. After all, a fallback had to be found. As it happened, there was a Chinese Han-class nuclear submarine in Hong Kong, going through final repairs before leaving for exercises in the Northern Atlantic. Yassin met the captain in a private club overlooking the harbour and offered him a bribe of $2 million American dollars to carry the R5 with him when he left. He had informed Scorpio on this decision, and they knew he would dig into the operational profit, but there were at least some advantages. Moving the R5 from Rotterdam to the UK would have been difficult and dangerous. Herod Sale was based in Cornwall, with direct access to the coast, so the new approach would make for a much more secure delivery. 2 weeks on a crisp, cloudless night in April, the submarine surfaced off the Cornish coast. Yassin, still using the identity of Eric Olsen, had travelled with it. He had quite enjoyed the experience of cruising silently through the depths of the ocean, sealed in a metal tubes. The Chinese crew had ordered not to speak to him on any account, and that suited him too. It was only when he climbed onto dry land that he once again took command, overseeing the transfer of the virus and other supplies Herod Sale had ordered. The work had to be done swiftly. The captain of the submarine had insisted that he would wait no more than 30 minutes. He might have $2 million in a Swiss bank account, but he had no wish to provoke an international incident, which would certainly have been followed by his own court-martial and execution. 30 guards had helped carry the various boxes to waiting trucks scrambling along the shoreline in light of a perfect half-moon. The submarine, looking somehow fantastic and out of place, half submerged in the slate-grey water of the English Channel, and almost from the start, Yassin had known something was wrong. He was being watched. He was sure of it. Some might call it a sort of animal instinct, but for Yassin it was simpler than that. He had been active in the field for many years. During that time, he had been in danger almost constantly. It had been necessary to fine-tune all his senses simply to survive. And although he hadn't heard or seen anything, a silent voice was screaming from him that there was someone hiding about 20 meters away, behind a cluster of boulders on the edge of the beach. He had been on the point of investigating when one of Sale's men, standing on a wooden jetty, had dropped one of the boxes. The sound of the metal hitting wood shattered the calm of the night, and Yassin spun on his heel. Everything else forgotten. There was limited space on the submarine, and so the R5 had been transferred from the beer barrel to less protective aluminium boxes. Yassin knew that the glass vial inside had been shattered. If the rubber seal had been compromised, everyone on the beach would be dead before the sun had risen. He sprinted forward, crouching down to inspect the damage. There was a slight dent on one side of the box, but the seal had held. The guard looked at him with a sickly smile. He was a lot older than Yassin, probably an ex-convict recruited from a local prison, and he was scared. He tried to make light of that. I won't do that again, he said. No, Yassin, you won't. The Beretta was already in his hand. He shot the man in the chest, propelling him backwards into the darkness and the sea below. It had been necessary to set an example. There would be no further clumsiness that night. Sitting in a hotel with the computer in front of him, Yasin remembered the moment. He was almost certain that it had been Alex Rider behind the boulder, and that if it hadn't been for the accident, he would have discovered there and then. Alex had infiltrated Sale Enterprises, pretending to be the winner of a magazine competition. Somehow he had slipped out of his room, evading the guards and the searchlights, and joined the convoy making its way down to the beach. There could be no other explanation. Later on, Alex had followed Herod Sale to London. He had already been responsible for the deaths of two of Sale's associates, Nadia Vole and the disfigured servant, Mr. Grin, despite little training and no experience. This was his first mission. Even so, he had single-handedly smashed the Stormbreaker operation. Sale had been lucky to escape, a few steps ahead of the police. Kill Alex Rider. It was what he deserved. Alex had interfered with a Scorpio assignment, and he would have to cost the organisation at least £5 million. The final payment owed by Herod Sale. Worse than that, he would have damaged their international reputation. The lesson had to be learnt. There was a knock at the door. Yasin had ordered service room, but it was just easier to eat inside the hotel. It was safer. Why make himself a target when he didn't need to? Leave it outside, he called out. He spoke English with no trace of a Russian accent. He spoke French, German, and Arabic equally well. The room was almost dark now. Yasin's dinner sat on a tray in the corridor, rapidly getting cold, but he did not move away from the desk, the computer in front of him. He would kill Alex Rider tomorrow morning. There was no question of his disobeying orders. It didn't matter that the two of them were linked, that they were connected in a way that Alex couldn't possibly know. John Rider, Alex's father. Their code names, Hunter and Cossack. Yasin couldn't help himself. He reached into his pocket and took out a car key, the sort that had two remote control buttons to open and close the car doors. But this key did not belong to any car. Yasin pressed the open button twice and the close button 3 times, and a concealed memory stick sprang out into the palm of his hand. He glanced at it briefly. He knew that it was madness to carry it. He'd been tempted to destroy it many times, but every man has his weakness, and this was his. He opened the computer again and inserted it. The file required another password. He keyed it in, and there, on the screen in front of him, not in English letters, but in Cyrillic, the Russian alphabet. His personal diary, the story of his life. He sat back and began to read. That's the end of the prologue. So the rest of the book is basically, until the last chapter, is basically Yasin Grigorovich's, the assassin's, autobiography that he's written. So it starts off with him in the in his village in Russia. The first chapter is in Russian writing, but it says underneath in English, home. The first line is, Yasha, we've run out of water. Go to the well. That was it. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's a good book. Anthony Horowitz. Most of the books aren't like that. All other 9 books just follow Alex Rider, but this one is a special one about Yasin Grigorovich. So it's really, 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 really good. So I hope you like that. We'll see you soon enough to read the next chapter. Also, Laurie's with me. Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
Yeah, he's been reading Cabin Fever.
Somebody call it a children's book, but 2 months ago I said I'd be a Wimpy Kid Geek, and I think I've accomplished it. So.
Let's give a clap to Laurie for becoming a Wimpy Kid Geek. So, yeah, we're going to be reading the rest of the book, hopefully, unless we go bankrupt or something. We don't even have any money anyway, so it's
really cost much
highly unlikely.
You, does it?
No. Thank you for listening. We've got another podcast, Geek Lord, and another podcast that I forgot. They're half-an-hour episodes where we talk about, I don't know, we finished our Star Wars films series. Thank you for listening, and goodbye. We'll see you, I don't know, tomorrow, I guess. If you're watching this on Alexa, what's the date? On the 25th of June. Goodbye.